Okay. Well, when I got outside, the engineer on duty was closing off the emergency shutdown. Now that's a valve handle wheel with a long rod that went down to the steam boiler and shut it off, because the whole ship was vibrating because the propeller blown off and the engine was racing. Well, all of the crew in the engine room got out safely. And of course it flooded it immediately because the shaft out of the door was open, although it should not have been open. It was much cooler, and that's why we let it be open. But anyway, then somebody said the propeller's gone, knocked the propeller off, and the steering gear, because the ship just went crazy, you know, and so I started making preparations. I went in and got my abandoned ship kit. I had a kit made. Unfortunately, I didn't have it in a plastic bag because they weren't that available, and I had it in a cloth bag, my passport and all those things, you know. And so I got it ready to go to the abandoned ship and go to my abandoned ship station. But the abandoned ship had not been sounded. When I got out on deck there, ready to, the third mate, he's in Mike Savnick from San Francisco. Mike was in charge of the boat, and I was second in command. My station was on the stern of the ship. His was at the control. Had a motor, we had an engine on it, motor, 100 horsepower Continental engine. Anyway, Mike and I were ready to lower the davits, but it was, as soon as the captain sounded, the abandoned ship. Well, the abandoned ship was 6 short blasts, 1 long blast of the steam whistle. And anyway, Mike, and I just standing there, and then I heard the skipper up on the top side, and a bunch of soldiers were perched at the rail, at the gunwale, ready to jump. And the captain says, "This is the captain speaking," with a megaphone. I could hear him. He said, "Get away! This is the captain speaking. Get away from that gunwale, all of you soldiers. I'll shoot the first son of a bitch that tries to jump." and so anyway, soldiers got back from the gunwale. Nobody jumped, and it wasn't 30 seconds later that we heard this plane coming over, Japanese plane. Well, the gunners, this was a different gun crew than Stone's crew. This was on the SS Antoine Saugrain, and Stone was with us on the Cornelius Hornet. So it was 2 different crews, but the gun crew we had was under Dean Matthews. He was from Ashland, Kansas. Dean wasn't, he was the opposite of Stone. He was laid back, sort of. He wasn't very stern and you know, not the commanding officer that Stone was. Anyway, the plane came over, and I could have hit him with a piece of coal, you know, but I hit him with a potato. Had one in my hand, but the gunners missed him. I don't know how in the hell they did. I think they were just too scared to even aim. I don't know. Anyway, he loosed a torpedo, and it was so much that torpedo port side again. And so but this time I just stayed there, and when that torpedo hit the number 2 hole at the front. Well, of course, everybody was out of there, and the soldiers were away from it enough that it didn't hurt anybody. It just blew the hatch covers off and so forth. Anyway, we had quarters in there for them, but nobody was in there. So then the captain sounded the abandoned ship. Go ahead. And so I waited till everybody was on board the lifeboat, and Mike Savnick, we'd already rehearsed what to do, and of course I was on the boat first. I should say I was on the boat first because I went down to get the engine going, so we could wouldn't have to row. And they had two lifeboats. They had 4 lifeboats on the ship, and 2 of them were equipped with motors. Well, one crew had lost their crank. You had to crank it with a hand, and so I started our motor and had it going, and our engine was going because I tuned them all the time. And every time we got port, I started the motors to be sure they were in good condition. Well, this day it kicked right off, started running. I had it okay, and so then somebody above me set down a rope and said, "Give us your crank." We don't have a crank, so I had to tie this. I lashed this crank to the rope, and they pulled it up, so we didn't have any more crank. Couldn't afford the engine to die now. And so anyway, I had plenty of gasoline. I didn't worry about that. But then every person who's stationed on our lifeboat was in position. Everybody ready to leave. And then here was a stupid. He was the first. He was one of my bosses. He was first engineer. Here he was up on the deck and hadn't come down yet. And he went back to his room to get a huge crescent wrench that he had for some stupid reason. He had that crescent wrench in his hand, so we had to stop the lifeboat to pick him up.